just piecing these pieces together of this wonderful picture that we've created all together, going through these what happened in the court case, and the orders. What they exemplified obviously was that administrative legal code is unlawful. Wynne Williams continued a case even though they'd been notified that the assignment of consent had been revoked, exemplifying that legal clearly can't be lawful because their version of habeas corpus, the administrative court's version of habeas corpus, still leaves the burden of proof against the defendant. So at the point where they want to make you the claimant, you're actually making an application for a habeas corpus writ. You're not the claimant, you're the applicant. And what you're doing is you're actually applying for a hearing for a habeas corpus to be heard. And obviously that's not a habeas corpus. And so there they are, laundering the credit file that's been given to stand surety after determining that nobody can stand surety to anybody else. So if I can't stand surety to anybody else, then why are you expecting me to stand surety to your legal fiction? If I have to stand surety to myself, then, and I don't have a title, then what liability is it that I'm standing surety to? None. So what that is the assignment of consent back to yourself when you stand there and you exemplify that. As you continue to allow the case to continue, he then exemplified the fact that their definition of what was even legal had no standing, because I asked him, if I take your name and fix a contract with it and say it's me, is that not fraud? And obviously he determined that he would disregard that. So here we've got somebody poncing around as a judge, who we found is a retired one at that, if he could ever claim that he was one to begin with in the administrative system. They've exemplified that a habeas corpus writ doesn't exist. The Queen's Bench doesn't exist, obviously, because you've got to get through the administrative system in order for you to get your lawful remedy, and there's none for you because you're using the legal fiction in order for you to use the claim, to lay the claim. Now, the burden of proof is obviously on the claimant. So a habeas corpus is to bring forth the body, the evidence, and the victim, and the claimant of the original claim that caused the unlawful incarceration is supposed to prove their claim at that point, not the party making the application, to have the evidence considered. And so by going and taking these orders and using them, the exemplification, is unlimited. It just comes down to how it is that you, what circumstances come along for you to be able to put this into practice. So we just wanted to piece those little bits together. Does anybody want to add anything to that? We've got another case that's hanging by its eyelashes at the moment over conveyance. So because they've marked our ULCT plates as being stolen, and that's why they're flagging up, the process now is to assign the conveyance into Minister and Maven, put the address at 125 The Suites, Halifax, HX7 8AA on there. And hopefully we'll get the V5 document then. So if they do want to try to use out of date and previous keepers' details, it just goes back to Minister and Event anyway. Now, here I am now in the court as Minister and Event. This conveyance wasn't properly exported, so it had ULCT plates on. And the legal fiction was used under duress through the blackmail of medicine. life-threatening medicine, in fact, that was required. And so the police told him that he couldn't have it unless he used the name. And so obviously he did. That was the contract. So at that point, he became a driver. And the implication of commerce and the code that supposed to represent came into play. And he then has got a court case hearing for driving without insurance. Now, even at this point, they've withdrawn the charge to move it to another date because the witness being the police. So you've got the police laying the claim and the police as the witness. Again, fine example of the fraud that has been sold to you all as law, being exemplified by them. And so obviously it's our fault. We are completely liable in this matter, in this case, and we should have done something that we didn't do. The party who was conveying himself in the conveyance genuinely believed that he was insured and indemnified. And so here comes Minister Emma Benn, your liability holder in due course. So hello, who are you? I'm the liability holder in due course. Who's that? Minister Emma Benn. Now, Minister Emma Benn's also on the V5 document, isn't it? So if they suddenly turn around and say that Minister Emma Benn isn't a valid legal entity, then what is? If there it is, you're using DVLA data, and if you're using DVLA data and it says Minister Emma Benn is the liability holder, the registered keeper, and the holder of the liabilities for that number plate and that VIN number, then in order for you to be able to imply the jurisdiction of it being still implied to be a vehicle, and therefore the party conveying themselves as a driver, and therefore the Traffic Act applicable, then you have to accept that I'm Minister Emma Benn, right? You can't argue with DVLA, can you? Being a policeman. So, Mr. Policeman, here I am to ask you to prove your claim. What evidence did you see that this individual was openly exemplifying his consent to be considered to be a driver of a vehicle and therefore under the jurisdiction of the Traffic Act? How do you normally, these are the questions obviously, how do you normally identify a conveyance being no longer being private and being implied to be for commercial reward, hire or gain? Well, we know the answer to that. It's a number plate. It's the registration process of it being registered, the VIN number being registered at DVLA. And you used an illegal fiction that wasn't yours in order for you to do it. Well, at that point, you didn't, did you? You didn't use a legal fiction that wasn't yours. You used a legal fiction that you did have the right of use of, with all of your rights reserved behind it. And the number plates on the conveyance never at any time had they got the DVLA plate, that they have committed the fraud to create the contract by removing the number plates that were on the conveyance and forced it into commerce, and that is statutory rape. They forced Minister Emma Benn into commerce, and that's okay. We don't mind. We're used to it. But at this point, here I am as Minister Emma Benn, the liability holder, and I'm asking you to prove that the party who was conveying themselves was implying to be in commerce. What was it that was used, that you used to create this contract that then obviously made the Traffic Act applicable? Can't be the number plate, can it? Was it the fact that you withheld vital medicine from Minister Emma Benn until he actually used the legal fiction in order for him to be able to access his resources to sustain his well-being? Did you cause contract through fear, harm, threat, loss, and damage? Well, you did if you blackmailed me for my medicine. Now, as far as I can see, anybody, any agent who's impersonating, therefore, a police officer because I'm wearing this uniform to imply that I'm upholding the law. I can't be wearing this uniform and breaking it, can I? I can't be blackmailing you for a contract so that I can hit my target this week, so that I don't get sacked, so that my company can make profits off the back of your credit file, off the back of your equitable rights that you've just assigned to my company for us to pay ourselves to keep you here. And we'll call it, and we'll do that in the name of universal law, in fact, because you broke it. You broke universal law. But you didn't. Minister Van didn't break universal law. And if he did, I am the liability holder for it. I am responsible for the fact that that conveyance was not properly exported. I am responsible for any charges or liabilities, and this is called the right of subrogation. I am the one who didn't do what it was that I said I would, and it is therefore me who has the liability in this matter, not him. Now, you can't be charged for something that I didn't do, and it all comes down to intent. Did Minister Mven intentionally imply that he was in commerce? No. Did he unintentionally create a contract? Not even at that point. He was forced to under duress for his health and well-being. Now, at the point where those are the circumstances surrounding it, then by no stretch of any imagination can you be doing your job as a policeman, which is to protect and uphold the rights of your community. While you've just trespassed and trampled all over this man in order for you to hit your target for reward, profit and gain. So it's unjust enrichment. Even the contract that you created was unjust enrichment. And therefore your claim is unlawful. Now, at that point, I would be, got to arrest you. Anything that you say would be taken down and used against you. I'll make sure of that. So I suggest that you keep quiet and stand under non-disclosure, which you've been so practiced at, and arrest them. Now, obviously, people are like, oh yeah, we've got to go to prison. Everybody's saying about, we've got to go to prison for this. You're already in prison, people. You're in the biggest open air prison that the universe has ever seen. And you think you're free. And that is the illusional state that you're in. And until you break through that hypothetical veil, then, you know, we were just laughing, you're not going to see the Pope pop out the other side and hand you the keys of the Vatican. But that's what's waiting for you. You are handing back the keys of your indoctrinated mind that you had locked up somewhere. You've opened the door and let it out, and you're no longer a legal minor. If you're no longer a legal minor, then you can no longer assign your consent. And if the judges are turning around and saying, implying, such as Wynne Williams did, that your consent doesn't count for anything, whether we've got it or not. So we told him that we haven't got it, and he continued anyway. So your consent doesn't count for anything. Okay, if my consent doesn't account for anything, then, and you need my consent in order for you to be then acting on the authority of the people, and the people are ruled by consent. If you deem that I haven't got any because I'm a legal minor, then what is it that you're actually ministering or administering over there in your completely delusional state? It's bullshit. It's bullshit from top to bottom, inside out, and you know, however long we want to spend our time learning this bullshit is up to you. But this opportunity that we've been given here is really to exemplify the truth, like we did in the court. The truth is we haven't got the assignment of consent. The truth is that she told us that she didn't trust us. The truth is that she withdrew it, and the truth is that we're here to say the truth. Now, anybody who wants to imply that we're anything except people who minister truth based on what it is that we've got back from the universe as a result of that, doesn't really matter to us. If you can't see what it is and who we are from what we do, then, you know, you're always going to be a victim of your own presumption. So, as we all are. So, what we're doing is, what should a government was set up to do is to stand surety to the liabilities of one another. if I've caused a situation through my lack of keeping my promise that I would do this, my word, then of course I'm going to come forward and say that I am the liability holder for that situation. But the situation should never have arisen, should it? Because the number plates were implying to be in the private. So really all we've ever asked anybody, all of you, to do is just to go and what happens if I don't do this? What happens if I change my money? What happens if I use Ministrum of N in place of a legal fiction? Just try it. What happens if I go on the website and I put, my email address and there are my accounts and press send? What if I just did something different today than for something that I've been doing all my life? Well, all I can guarantee you is that something different will come from it. And that's what, obviously, we've got this wonderful exemplification now, thanks to all of these people that are in your community. And carry on anyway, regardless of what it is that's said about us. And from that, obviously, we're able to stand in our truth and face any fantasy demon that we might have conjured up for ourselves. And so the point of this is that even if you are using a legal fiction, there is somebody still there to stand surety to you, which is you. And if you're not capable, or if you're not feeling confident enough to do it, there are people in your community that will do this on your behalf. And that is why we allowed a government to be created, because we all fell for the illusion of money and the false claim that this planet, this rock, was ours, and that we could do whatever the hell we liked with it, with complete disregard to it, and through our indoctrinated mindset. So really all you're doing is you're setting the record straight. You are accepting the liabilities that you've created. You're not pointing the finger and saying, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. The book starts and stops with me, and who is me, me, and me, and me, and me, and me. So if we're all prepared to hold the book, then there's nobody to pass it to. And there's no, you don't need anybody to pass it to. And that's the whole point of this. You are the redemption of your soul is what it is that we're talking about here. And by standing surety to one another and keeping your word being your bond, you don't need pieces of paper. You don't need third-party interloper to come and do arbitration and decide who, well, let's work it out between us with a third-party interloper in the middle of it. I fucked up. I did it wrong, and I'm here to stand surety to any charges, and I will discharge those charges in the same way they were created. What is that? With the implied equitable rights that I've got behind any of these legal fictions. Take your pick. Which do you want? And we'll grant you and assign you the right of use of one of these equitable rights accounts in order to discharge those charges with. Which one will we offer you as settlement for these charges? 2020, 1,000, which is Her Majesty's government, and it's overdrawn to 10 quadrillion. So whatever charges it is that you are going to imply that you have suffered through somebody not performing obligations, void of valid contracts, prove your claim, and we'll discharge those charges against the 10 quadrillion. And here's a promissory note ready for you as a bill of exchange. And that's what you're going to do in the court. For any kind of charges, for any commercial implication, you have got the equitable rights back in your hand. Nobody can go and trespass on them without your consent. Everybody knows that. Now it's just a case of practicing that. And if everybody turns around tomorrow and says, well, my name's under non-disclosure, I can't use it, it's only the system would never exist for another nanosecond. So fortunately, we don't need everybody to do that. We haven't needed everybody to do what it is that everybody's saying that everybody's doing. For the people who will just go along with that any old mindset. So you know, there's a wave, and the Minister of Events are at the front of it, and all you've got to do is come along really for the ride. And so I hope you enjoy it like we do.